Welcome to another episode of Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. This is the show which highlights the importance of estate planning and why everyone needs to do it. And of course, the unfortunate consequences of what happens far too often when people have not planned. I'm your host, John Braddock, the author of Click Here When I Die, and the founder of My Life and Wishes, the Legacy Vault, an online planning and document storage solution created to make things easier for those you love. Today, I am thrilled to introduce my very special guest, Dean Eason-Williams. He is the founder and owner of NotaryCLT Signings based in Charlotte, North Carolina. But before we jump in, let me give you a little bit of background on Dean. Dean was born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. He graduated high school in June of '89 and attended community college locally, where he was the editor of the student newspaper and served as the Student Government Association parliamentarian for 1 quarter prior to be elected to the position of president, serving for another 2 years before transferring to a 4-year private college. There, he studied business administration management and information technology. He also served as the yearbook editor, the athletic department public information officer, as well as the statistician for the college basketball team. And additionally, he was the District 2 basketball statistician for the NCAA. After graduating in May 1995, Dean moved to the real world. At that time, he moved to Alabama, where he took a position as a computer and English teacher in a private K-12 Christian school. He also coached lower level grade soccer and served as the advisor for the school's yearbook. He also took a position as an instructor at a local community college within the business and industry division, where he advanced to the role of lead instructor of BIS computer instruction. He taught both on site and on campus, from lower level desktop applications to high level programming languages for clients such as 3M, Boeing, Teledyne Brown Engineering, and employees of the Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Dang, that's impressive. In the early 2000s, he made the decision to move to San Francisco, where he took a job as a medical records trainer and ultimately a content team manager for an AI company that was ultimately acquired by Google. He returned to North Carolina in 2007 as a result of his grandmother's illness and death, and to help with his ailing father. After owning and operating his own web design and SEO management company for over 13 years, Dean decided to change gears and take on the world of being a professional full-time notary. He was commissioned, then certified through the National Notary Association, or NNA, and loan signing system, and he became a certified notary trust delivery agent. Additionally, he has become an official Legacy Vault partner of My Life and Wishes. And most recently, he has increased his notary scope by starting his own signing service, which is NotaryCLT Signings. The reason I wanted to have Dean as my guest, beyond the fact that Dean is just a really cool human being and I like him a lot, he's no stranger to loss. Dean lost his maternal grandfather on Easter Sunday in 1997 when he was only 6 years old. He lost his step-grandfather in 1985 when he was 14, his maternal uncle in 1990 when he was 19. He lost his mother in 1996 at the age of 25, his maternal grandmother in 2000 at the age of 30, and then in 2007, he lost his best friend and his paternal grandmother. And just 5 months later, he lost a paternal uncle. And Dean's father passed just a few years ago in 2021. Wow, more than anyone should have to deal with, especially at such young ages. Hey, Dean, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Super happy to have you. How are things today out in the North Carolina area?
Hot.
Hot?
There's no other word for it. It's just hot. Someone moved up from Florida and brought their weather.
Well, we're used to it being hot down here in Arizona this time of the year, but I'm never really sure of, different parts. You get quite a bit of humidity down there as well.
We didn't used to, but these last few years, as everyone knows, there's been quite a bit of change.
Indeed. And that person that brought it up from Florida.
Yes, yes.
Hey, Dean, as my audience knows, I love talking about passion, the why behind why people do what they do. And, in reading through your bio, you've had quite a diverse career from teaching to working in IT, having your own tech company, and now running your own notary business. What motivated these career shifts, especially your decision to become a full-time notary?
Well, I am a person that loves challenges. Um, I'm a natural born overachiever, pretty much, I guess. And not that I say that in a bad way. I like being an overachiever. But I would say probably I got bored along the line, in certain areas. The economy changed, and there was just there are a lot of things at play. The opportunities present themselves, and then there were just times where, hey, things just kind of went totally downhill. So I became a notary because it's this is going to sound really weird, but I love structure. I love rules and regulations. I love being held to a standard that is expected of you. And in the notary world, there's a right way and a wrong way. There is very, very little gray area in the notary space. You either do it right or you're not doing it right. So with loan signings, there's a specific way, a specific everything is the way it's supposed to go. And to me, that type of thing, like I had mentioned to you before, it's like playing a game. I'm not really a gamer as far as video games or, I mean, I play Pokemon, right? That's about as far as I go in gaming. Although I do have an event tonight with the local LGBT chamber that we're having a game night that is supposedly for networking, but we'll see, right? Alcohol is going to be involved, so who knows? um, so, to me, it's like each signing, whether it's general notary work, whether it's a loan signing, whether it's estate signings, everything just, it's like, it's like doing the puzzle. It's like getting the word right or whatever. And, okay, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, and then boom, when it's done, you feel like, hey, I won, that I passed that challenge. And it thus far hasn't gotten old. I probably at some point I'll get old and probably start messing up or whatever. But I'm going to embrace it until that happens.
Well, yeah, I can imagine, the detail-oriented nature of signings.
Mhm.
And like you say, the fact that, they have to be done correctly. I mean, if something is not done correctly, it can be invalidated, right?
Right, it gets
But
rejected.
yeah, but I remember back early in my career, back in the early 1980s, and they were talking about how we were going to go to this paperless world, right? But
Right.
my God, last time I signed, loan documentation, anything else, I mean, there is nothing paperless about that process and the
If you're
amount
the
of
buyer,
signatures.
you're gonna have a really bad carpal tunnel event afterwards. But if you're the seller, hey, you know what? It's easy peasy. Roughly 35 pages max. So I did one of those this morning, as a matter of fact. And the lady, her husband had just left that morning to go to hospice.
Oh,
And she knows, and I tell you what, to actually uh, the one of the things that I do not do, I don't take these assignments. I don't take reverse mortgage assignments. Um, Not because I think that people shouldn't do it or whatever. I can't stand the fact of sitting there watching this person sign their home over. Granted, they get to live there until their days, but I can't get over the fact that something they worked so hard for, that because they need financial backing, and I get that. It's just the whole concept of this house is going to go away from their family, from their estate, from everything. And I just can't do that. My heart breaks in thinking about doing reverse mortgages. But the seller packages, wow, this morning the lady, she had accepted that this was inevitable. And I heard her, she had a phone call while we were doing it. And in the phone call, she goes, well, he's going to be in a certain area for the first 10 days if he makes it.
Yeah.
And I'm an emotional person. And I don't care to admit that. I mean, hey, I have emotions. I have a heart. But I just kind of had to stop the signing with her there for a second, and just have a one-on-one conversation and say, are you okay? You wow. Now, granted, she's they're remarried. They were divorced for a while. They remarried, been remarried for 8 years. He came down with some serious bone issue, evidently a year and 8 months ago, and now he's in hospice.
Wow.
That's, to me, that is a terrible turn of events. And I know we'll probably get into legacy vault, estate planning. That is one of the things that, and you mentioned, the amount of death that I have gone through, endured. At each level, no matter really how old I was, there were always things that, even when my grandfather passed in 77 on Easter Sunday, even then, they tried to hurry the kids away. But here was the thing: my sister and myself were the ones that found him in the backyard.
Oh.
He had been working on his ridiculous, ugly orange El Camino, right? Just horrible looking car, but he loved it. But in the middle of him doing that, he had a blood clot hit his heart, and boom. I remember the last words that my grandmother told to him outside of it's in the city, but I call it it was like a country house, because it had that screened in porch with the door that would, had the long spring, I called that a country kind of back house or whatever. But she made his favorite meal, which she called it goulash. I guarantee you somebody from New Orleans would beg to differ with her that wasn't necessarily goulash, but it was her version of it. But she stood at the back door, and his name was Ralph, and she goes, Ralph, I made your favorite. It's goulash. And he says, great. I love you. I love you. And she says, I love you too. And those were the last words that the two of them spoke to each other. Now, you would normally think, wow, this is like a Lifetime movie, or maybe not Lifetime, one of those at TMZ, or no, TMC, whatever they are. I don't watch TV all that much. But you would think that that's like the stuff that's written in Hollywood. You would think that at their age, that saying those words and everything, it just, but that's the last thing that the two of them said to each other. Shortly thereafter, she went to the door and said, Ralph, come in. It's done. Come in. But he had already passed. So when I say those were the last words they said, she didn't know. So I count those love you as their last words together, because I choose to believe that was really the last part of the conversation that the two of them had.
I believe that people should, be it your spouse, your life partner, significant other, first words you should say in the morning, last words you say before you go to bed, and every time you separate one another, because as we both know, I mean, life is not guaranteed.
And
at
life
all.
is
And
shorter than you expect it to be. And every morning when Jody leaves, we have a routine, and it started as something just really stupid, right? We'll go out on the front porch, we sit out there together for a little bit after we've gotten all of his stuff ready for, he takes a lunch, I make him a lunch and everything. We're out on the front porch, and he gets up and walks over to me, and he goes, okay, well, I got to go. Kiss. And he goes, love you. I say, love you too. And he says, we'll chat later. Yep, we'll chat later. All right, have a good day. Have a good day. And then he gets in the car, and this is where it's sort of the silliness comes in. He gets in the car, and he drives a Mazda. Is that call it? The Mazda. He pushes the button, to make it go out of gear or whatever. And whenever I hear that, I wave, and he waves, from inside the car, waves. And then as he backs out of the driveway and goes all the way to the backside of the mailbox, we have to wave again. He rolls the window down on the passenger side and waves. And, then he goes on. I can then come inside after that, because if I don't do both waves, I'm questioned as to, oh, you don't love me anymore, something like that. But yeah, it ended up, and actually what happened, how that started, it's kind of silly. There was a car coming up. There's a cul-de-sac down at the far end of our road, and the car was coming up at one point, and I was like waving to him, trying to get him to stop, because we had these gigantic elephant ears. We still have elephant ears that line the driveway. Not elephant, banana trees that line the driveway. And you can't see when they're in their full upness. You can't see when things are coming down. So I was trying to stop him. He thought I was waving at him. He finally was able to see. They stopped. And so there was no injury, no death out front, thank goodness, because we've had enough of that. And from that point forward, it was like, okay, wave, twice. It's a little excessive, I'm sure.
hey,
But now it's tradition.
I love routines, and I like the fact that we chat later. You're making
Yep.
a commitment, right? It's something
Yep.
to okay, I got to make it home, because
Yep.
we're gonna chat later. So
Yep.
hey, you know it's interesting, and I want to come back to a little bit of notary stuff, but because we're on the topic, and we talk about your grandfather, and being 6 years old, and to witness that and be the one to find him, and the fact that which hard for anybody, right? But the fact that you uh, remember the conversation between
Oh yeah.
grandma and grandpa, and you find the good things in it,
Mm-hmm.
as you go on, and it's a great story. I love stories, both good and not so good. And again, you've experienced a significant amount of loss at various stages of your life. It Is there one particular story that you can share? I mean, I know you'd mentioned some things about losing your father a few years ago to me. Is that something you'd be comfortable sharing a little bit? What the experience was like? And
Sure. As it stands now, well, my dad passed in September 11th, 2021. So I mean, of all days, right? And he I was harping on him for years and years and years, because he was in failing health. I moved back here in 2007 because after my grandmother passed, who, as you mentioned, was my absolute best friend. When I was little, I spent more time during the summer with her and my step grandfather, whom I didn't really refer to as a step grandfather, really. He was the only grandfather I knew on that side of the family, because my dad's dad had died before I was born. So I never met him. I've done a lot of genealogy and everything else. And just recently, within the last 2 weeks, I've made contact with someone who actually may have photos of a man I've never seen before. And so I'm kind of hopeful to maybe unveil that. I'm a big person on family, probably because I've lost all of my family. As I was about to say, my dad died in 2021. I have one sister. She's older than me, 2.5 years. I call her my older sister. She's my only sister, but I and then there's me. She has two daughters who each have a daughter. I have Jody, and we have 3 dogs and 5 fish. But we, my sister and myself, with the exception, my dad has an older brother that lives a little further way down, and we stay in touch, but we're not necessarily, we don't hang out and everything else. Matter of fact, here recently, I made a commitment to him that I would call him every weekend just to check in, see how things are going. I talked to him last night, and whenever I called Sunday, he didn't answer. Well, there was reason. He was in the hospital. So yeah, imagine that, right? So now he's got all kinds of additional issues going on. He's a cancer survivor. But you know, outside of him being the complete eldest of the entire family, it is then my sister and myself. And now, without counting my dad's oldest brother, all of my mother's side of the family are gone. They're totally wiped out. There's no cousins, there's nobody, right? My dad's side of the family, all wiped out except for the eldest brother. So for my sister and myself, we sort of think of ourselves now as we're the elders. It doesn't go any higher than us necessarily, right? And who wants to be that at age, you know, I'm 53. I was 51 when my dad died. So I kind of become the patriarch, if you will, at 51. That shouldn't happen. That totally should not happen. And my sister, of course, 2.5 years older than myself. She has stage 4 COPD. She goes into the hospital roughly about 4 to 5 to 6 times a year. And I know, just because I know, she's not going to be around much longer. And that leaves me. Now, I know that kind of sounds like a woe is me kind of, you know, oh, feel pity for me and all that. I don't mean it to come across that way at all. What for your listeners and the people that watch this, especially the topic of your podcast, is nightmares of what happens in estate planning and what, you know, when let me just put it this way. I harped on my dad for years and years and years. Dad, you've got to do this. You've got to put this in place. And I harped on him too long, because that's when he started being dishonest with me, saying that I've done it. He didn't. So I pushed him beyond that point of, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it, you know. And I kind of feel responsible for that. I could have taken a different approach, taken the lead, and, you know, got like software and, you know, typed it up for him and filled in the blanks and whatever. But I trusted that he was doing it. When he passed, it was sudden. They kept him on a machine when we got there. And so he had a girlfriend that was living with him at the time, because my parents had divorced when I was 9, I think. And so he had remarried like 4 times. My mom remarried once. But because he had a girlfriend, living girlfriend, she wasn't the kindest person. And so she knew that my sister and myself were coming to the hospital. While we went to the hospital, she went to the house. When she went to the house, she cleared house. She got wallets, she got keys to the car, she got anything and everything that you could imagine. And she left town. Poof, immediately. So my dad lived in Gaston County, which, let me just put it this way. Gaston County doesn't get in a hurry to do anything. Okay. No, the tortoise wins there. Okay. So in Gaston County, I actually, I was able to go through my dad's phone because I was his backup as far as if he ever locked himself out, I would be the backup that could, change his password so he could get back into it. And so I had access to his phone. On his phone, he had his banking app that was there. So I was able to actually log in. Yeah, that was wiped out, totally wiped out. Immediately in my mind, I'm thinking, pursue charges against this person. This is theft, that she's not his wife. She's not on the account. She's using a card with his name on it, and she knows that he has passed. So to me, in my mind's eye, that means you use that, you just, that's that's theft as far as I'm concerned. And
Absolutely.
one of the lowest forms of theft. But I was able to print the records and all that. I went to the authorities, again, Gaston County. Sometimes it's the sheriff, sometimes it's the police department, sometimes it's the lady that lives on the corner. I mean, it's just, it's a cluster over there. Okay. So finally, they were ready to pursue charges, and the DA called me, and they had locked her up. She came back and they put her in jail, but she got out. The DA called me and says, well, I hate to tell you, but I can't put this in front of a jury because we can't say whether or not on your dad's deathbed, if he told her, hey, use my card, it's your money. I can't prove that he didn't say that. So we can't do this in court. We're going to have to drop the charges.
Oh.
So they dropped the charges. So she didn't even have to face any punishment other than a little inconvenience of 15 minutes of going and checking into jail and leaving. After that, okay, here's the other part, which is actually North Carolina State. And I'm a Tar Heel bleeding blue and blue through and through. Go Heels. Love my state. But the state has a guideline that if you don't have a will, you have to have somebody who is going to apply to be administrator instead of executor, because you can't be executor without a will. The executor, the executor executes the will. Right. The administrator administers the estate. Right? Both pay the bills, both do the taxes, both distribute and everything else, but one has to wait 30 days before they can even apply. Wow. You had to wait 30 days to be the administrator. So for 30 days, I couldn't go in the house. I couldn't go through and do anything to see what she had done or hadn't done. Then we found out she's still living there. She was still living in the house, by the way, with her boyfriend. Did you make those two things out? She had a boyfriend on the side while she was supposedly right. So this was insane. Okay, so it's insult to injury. I know it's like you need to sip something, right? I mean, add something else to that.
Well, yeah, it's it's just water. But here in this story, it needs to be a little more potent than that.
Right. So sorry for a longer story seeming longer than what it should be, but essentially I had to and by the way, the landlord would not let us in. I went to the landlord with the sheriff, and the landlord said, well, as long as she's living there, because get this, this is just going to blow your mind. She found a copy of the lease, and in purple crayon, you hear it? Purple crayon, wrote her name as one of the tenants.
Hmm.
I know I would have chose a blue crayon. I mean, really blue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
If you're going to use crayons, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, here's the problem. I'm sure she's eating crayons. I mean, because this is ridiculous, right? Um, and so the landlord said he couldn't touch anything until the prepaid month's rent was up. Then he would have to evict her. You ever heard of anybody getting evicted and how long that takes and the process? And yeah, 9 months later, 9 months after my dad died, she was finally kicked out. Yeah. So because she lived there, she was not letting us have access and threatened us that if we came on the property, she would shoot and everything else. Um, Let me back up just a little bit, because after the first 3 weeks after my dad's death, he had a blue Mustang. I don't know what year it was. I can't remember, but I think it was like a 2013, 2016, something like that. Anyway, my dad and my sister, that's their thing. Mustang, Ford. Yeah, found on road dead. I don't know. But they love Mustangs. Okay. So my sister is extremely sentimental, and can also possibly be overly, let's just say, come Hades or high water, she wanted that car. And so I turned the opposite direction, and she had it put on a rollback truck, which I guess is something that they can pull it onto it, and had it transported to her house and put it in her garage, because she didn't want the girlfriend, who couldn't drive anyway. She didn't have a license, because she had had 3 DUIs or something like that. I don't know. So my sister takes the car, parks it, and covers up the windows in her garage so that nobody will see that it's actually in there. And once I was able to start, a year and a half later, after going through all of the probate stuff, all of the searching through, trying to find documents, having to go online, it's amazing how much stuff just comes out of the woodwork. And death brings out the ugly. It brings out the ugly. So, I'm looking for life insurance policies. I'm looking for, thank goodness that he had Medicare, because I was shocked that out of a $50,000 medical bill, we only had to pay $495 or something like that. So for those people who say, "Oh, I don't like Medicare," I love it. It covered a lot. I don't know what's happening back there. Something changed. Oh,
That's a nice scenic effect, though. I like that. That was good.
alrighty then.
For those who are just listening, it just looked like fireworks went off behind Dean, and it actually was at a really good moment in the story. So that's really cool. Right? So,
Well, we went through all the documents, and I was able to finally, when you do probate is not fun, because you have to go appear before them. There's different steps along the way of this report has to be put in, and it's an estimate. But after you actually are able to look at everything, you have to give real value to the assets, and you have to pay to submit that report to probate. By the way, you had to pay to be an administrator. Okay. Not only that, but you have to actually go to all your siblings and say, "Hey, do you mind if I be the administrator, or do you want to, we're going to have a runoff here, right? Elect me administrator." And if there's disagreement amongst the family, thank goodness my sister, she says, "Oh Lord, I can't do it. You're going to have to." I already knew it was going to be me. I actually did several others prior to this, but they were heck easier than this one. This one really put me through the ringer, because it doesn't allow you to grieve. You cannot grieve, because your mind is just constantly racing about, did I do this one? When do I have to go do here? Did I file this? Did I, all those things, right? And so finally, literally 2 years, 2 years, I was able to go and have my final meeting, submit everything, and be released from my administrator duties. However, should anything pop up from now on, even though the estate is closed, anything pops up that, you know, the estate had to do or had to cover or whatever, that court will contact me, and it has to be opened up again for that issue to be settled. You want to talk about weight? I mean, all the things that I saw come out that I had no clue, because, oh, by the way, a little interesting fact. There's this thing called, I don't know if they're payday loans or something like that, but you can actually, evidently it comes in the mail, and you just put your little information right there, and they'll create an account for you and debit like $200 or $300 in your account. Boom, free money. Not quite, because when you open those, there's an interest rate that is through the roof, and it compounds and da 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 da, and boom, the girlfriend had opened up 6 of those in my dad's name. So that was also part of the fraud that I tried to get the sheriff to do, and the DA. Hands off. They couldn't prove it. There's no jury in the world that's gonna, you know. Okay, so what you're saying is, I, as the survivor of this issue, I just basically look at it and say, well, she gets off scot-free. So
and your dad's
if
estate
that is
has
true,
to
and it
pay all the debt back, and there's a term for that. I think it's called elder abuse.
yes,
And unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do about it after the fact. And
right,
even when the elderly individual is still alive, it only works if you can convince that individual to take an action and press charges.
yep,
So,
and move away from that. Yep.
yeah,
Well,
wow.
and to kind of tie this in with, like, you know, estate signings and having an estate plan and legacy vault, had my dad done the things that I had asked him to do, probate would have been avoided, right? The will would have named me executor, and boom, everything would have fallen nicely into place. Now, granted, there would have been other aspects of her that would have complicated things and so forth, but at least the pressure, the stress, the anxiety, and almost the fear of unknown, because you don't know what is coming, because you have to put out the notice to creditors, and it has to publish 4 different times, and you know they have until 3 months after the last time that it was published in order to actually send stuff in. So you're sitting back here waiting, thinking, what else did she do? What else is coming in? Because I had to write letters to all of these people. I had to provide copies of death certificates, and it was just, it was insane. And I
Crazy.
guess for your viewers, if there is anybody out there that has not yet established their plan, there's a phrase, and I love it. Everybody's heard it, but this fits perfectly into this entire space. And that is, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
you are putting that burden on those that are left.
And what
To
people
me, that's
don't
a failure.
understand is that, and so many people just think, well, I don't have much, and da da da, and somebody will figure it out. Well, you know what? Everyone has stuff.
Mhm.
To figure it out, like, in your case, you have to be an administrator. You got to deal with probate, which, depending on what state you're in, can be a year, it can be 5 years
Yep.
before assets can be distributed, and things can happen. It's
Yep.
time consuming, it's frustrating, it's increased stress and anxiety, it's expensive. And
Expensive.
the I think the greatest final gift we can leave to our families is having a plan in place that gives family the opportunity to grieve and be
Yeah.
sad without all the unnecessary emotions. And you know, I think for a lot of people, it's just they don't understand, what it's going to look like if they
Hmm.
don't plan. And then there's some that just don't care. I
Right.
can't fix those that don't care, um, but we can help educate and inform people, what it's going to be like and why they should be planning and why they should be preparing. Which is why I love having people like you come on and share stories as ugly as they are, and frankly, this one's kind of mind-blowing. I mean, holy crap.
I could go into much more detail, but we don't have enough time. So
Oh,
it
yeah,
got ugly. But
that's
I'll add one more thing to what you were saying, and that is, people who are not thinking about this or just think, nah, they'll just take care of it. And I think I shared this with you the other day, that common sense is like deodorant, right? The people who need it the most aren't using it.
aren't using it. Exactly.
So, I mean, common sense says, hey, and you put the point out there that a lot of people think, well, I don't have much. It's not when we think of estate, we think of big old mansions and all these cars and stocks and bonds and vacation homes and whatever. But you know what? That necklace that your great grandmother gave you, your granddaughter would probably love to have that legacy piece, right? And keep that in the family. The what you have may be small in your mind, but when you're gone, that little smallness is all that anybody has, right? And I would rather have the little than nothing at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the sentimental things, which is why, you know, it yeah, people need to have a plan. They need to make sure family knows everything that they have
Mhm.
and how to find it,
Yes.
which is,
Great segue.
the genesis into the legacy vault that we created to solve those problems. I know you've partnered with My Life and Wishes to make it available as another service, which I think is amazing because you're doing, all these signings, which are critical and important documents. And
Mhm.
where do people keep those things? In addition to, do you have life insurance, Dad?
Right.
Where is it? Who's
Mhm.
the company? And
Yep.
those things. So, um,
401ks and all that stuff where you
yeah,
don't even, there's so much that can be stored there. One of the things, and I don't keep, I have a format for my passwords, right? There's a base word, and then there's something that follows after it that's usually initials or whatever with an exclamation or something like that. But it's whatever it's for. But one of the things in Legacy Vault is being able to keep those online passwords. And in today's age, for a lot of people, that online presence, it can probably become a very important thing. Uh, and if you need to go in there and delete something or whatever, if you can't get in there, you can't get in there. And that's true for like bank account passwords. That's true for social media, obviously, but also any other organizations that you may be a member of.
exactly.
If and we have computers that will store the password, the username and password, and so forth. That's great, but it's also dangerous because if you leave your computer somewhere and you're not gone,
Right.
boom, 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 it's accessible.
Well,
But leaving
hard
this,
drives fail. I've
yes, they do.
experienced that. And the other thing is, if you are protecting your laptop or computer, you got a password on it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Who knows
Yep.
the password? They need that password to get in to find the password, right?
Exactly. Yep. And then, you know, safe deposit boxes don't really do it anymore. And I got a funny story about that. And I know we're probably running over, but just this past Friday, I was doing a drill box at a PNC over in it was in Matthews, right over here. It was the first box of the day. And so, you know, we're like, oh, well, you know, we had 4 to drill that particular day. So the girl that was there, the manager, she was brand new. She's never overseen any of this. And there's protocol. You have to have 2 people from the bank in the vault at the same time. You have to have the notary and the person who's drilling. So it's all, you know, there's not ever single one person, you know, left unguarded. And so very first one, it was box 27. Okay, so the guy's drilling it. And so when Bobby, you know, pulls it out, he's like, oh, it's not empty. And I'm like, crap, you know, because when they're empty, you don't have to do anything, right? You still get paid, but you're there, so you still get paid. But when they're not empty, you have to sit there with the bank manager and go through an inventory of everything that's in there. Well, lo and behold, as they say, box 27 comes sliding out, and Bobby opens it up, and we see, is it Kensington or Kennington or whatever, a pack of bullets. Well, that immediately right off the top means we're going to have a visit from law enforcement, because they have to actually come take over anything that's ammo or firearm or anything that's related to that. Well, the bank manager, oh, I don't know what to do. What? I had never done this. I was like, I'll walk you through this. Okay. And what was weird is Bobby, he's been doing this for 14 years. This is the second time in 14 years that this has happened. And he's like, Dad, burn it, you know. But anyway, you know, I was like, you, first of all, I said, you need to go get gloves. She goes, oh, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna go get gloves. I was like, okay, that would have been my first thing, you know, boom. So she goes and gets gloves. She puts gloves on me. And so there's a rag in this tray, and it was the small safe deposit box. But there's a rag that's in there, which I could already see kind of where this was going, because there was oil all over the rag. And, you know, whenever there's bullets, kind of like where there's smoke, there's fire, where there's bullets, there's probably that other thing. And sure enough, it was. And she reached in, like, I was like, girl, no, don't do that. Do not do that. I was like, take your pen and, you know, lift that up and see, you know, hey, can we see if the safety's on? Can we see if there's a clip in there? Can we see, is it, you know, whatever. But, you know, she lifted it up. We could see that it was empty. Okay. There was, the clip was actually laying beside it, and the chamber was empty. She's like, oh, Lord, what am I supposed to do now? What do I do? And I was like, let me walk you through this. You know, you first of all, we have to stop everything we're doing. We can't do another thing until law enforcement comes and, you know, they interview and find out who owns the box and serial number of this and da-da-da-da. And of course, they confiscate it and take it off. And she's like, I just can't believe this is my very first time ever doing this. And Dad bless it, there was a gun in there. I say all that just because it's a humorous story, but your gun is not even supposed to be in there. But the bank cannot, they tell you in your agreement, no weapons, no drugs. Actually, they tell you don't put money in safe deposit boxes, which when I first started doing this, I was like, that's kind of weird, because when I think safe deposit box, I think vault, you know, where money is in the vault. No, they actually tell you don't do that. But here's a little small thing, and I'm not trying to make your viewers go against anything, but the bank does not accompany you into the room where you're putting your stuff in there.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's how those bullets in that gun made it in there.
Total privacy.
Yes. And so the only time that the people from the bank actually see that is once you've closed it and they walk into the vault with you with their branch key and your key, and you guys boop, do it that way, and yay, everything is safe. Yeah. With Legacy Vault, there's not going to be a gun. Right. No gun in Legacy Vault. You just can't do it, right? And also, the master branch key is actually the person that you've actually given access to when they need the access. So there's not a drilling process like you do with safe deposit boxes and go through all this drama of, ooh, let's open it up. No, you've been given advance permission or access. Type. Everything's right there, and nobody gets hurt.
And in a legacy vault, if you are a gun owner, you can tell family where the firearm
Where it is.
You know,
yeah, it's in the safe deposit box.
Yeah, or it's in the upstairs bathroom above the ceiling tile behind the vent. So, you know, get it out of there before you end up selling the house or doing whatever. As a gun owner myself, last place I would ever put a gun is in the safe deposit box, because
because
I'm
where are
sure
you
if
going to use it?
yeah, I'm sure if I need to use it, the bank's not going to be open.
Robert, hold on 1 second. I need to go get my gun.
Yeah. Can we go to the bank together?
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
My.
Hey, well, this has been great. I want to ask you one more. Well, actually, two more questions. And we can do this again another time, because you and I could talk for days. But so I always like to ask, you know, who or what inspires you to keep pushing forward in your career and your personal life in spite of, you know, the ups and downs?
I have been with Jody since, well, let's just say we've been together right at almost 14, almost 15 years. We got married on July 4th of 2020. The purpose for that was, well, and it was during COVID, by the way. So we got married in our front yard, and we had our reception in our backyard that we had just slaved away on, building this 18 by 18 foot deck. And so it was like, okay, well, we'll just have the reception in the backyard. So we put up tents, and, you know, just Jody wanted the champagne looking table things with the raptor. I was like, hey, as long as I have a place to put my drink, I don't care. But we got married on July 4th, so that I can say that for as long as we are together, we will always have sparks in our marriage. They may not come from us necessarily when we get too terribly old, but we'll still have them. I say that to actually reveal my why. And my why is Jody.
Love that.
My why is him, because while I've been able to, since we've been together, you know, you mentioned doing web design and small business marketing and all that. Everybody used to call me the best secret for small business marketing, because I could take your small business and take you from zero and just put you right up in the search ranks, because I know how they work, right? I know how the algorithms pick things out, and I know. Let's just say I'm pretty good at that. As a matter of fact, right now in Charlotte, if you type in notary in Charlotte, and Charlotte's a pretty big place, right? Well, the notary near me, if you actually do that, or you do like trust delivery Charlotte, hey, it's me. And I didn't pay anybody to do any of that. Obviously, I did it myself. But my why is Jody has been sort of the breadwinner while we've been together. Prior to meeting him, you know, I went through the, you know, the 6-figure salary world and all that. But coming back here to North Carolina, especially after what all had transpired and so forth, there was basically some depression that set in. And I mean, not like depression, like I'm going to kill myself, but depression as far as feeling less than, and, you know, I'm washed up, you know, I'm no longer on my game and stuff like that. And so I reinvented myself doing the web design and the SEO. And it was a business, but it wasn't a business that I wasn't bringing in what I wanted to bring in. And the thing about me that is difficult for me is, if something is my passion, it's my baby, I have a very difficult time handing it over, even to let somebody just hold the finger of the baby, right? Because that's my baby, and I do that the best that anybody's going to do for me. I'm not sure I can trust you to do and handle with care the same way that I do. I'm selfish in that way, selfish with my quality of work, I guess. And being a signing service owner now, I say that and it sounds weird because I've only been a signing service owner since the beginning of June. But it's hard to actually hand off signings to somebody across the country or whatever and trust them that they're going to do that like Dean does it. I have one signing service. I still work for signing services. I have one signing service that just told me today that I am the only notary that they've used thus far that still has a 0 errors. And he uses over 300 notaries. So
Congratulations on
I
that.
don't say that to brag about myself. I say that to say I'm trying to do my best so that this will take off and that Jody can actually move away from his W-2 and join me, and the two of us sit here and do this. He's a notary also. He's also a CNTDA. That was me. I forced him to do this. But he is my why. And the other part of that is what I had touched on sort of earlier, and that is I love this entire notary space simply because the rules, the regulations, the strictness, the right, the wrong. I love that because someone will say, you know, oh, well, were you supposed to do da 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 da? Well, according to blah 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 blah. No, you know, it's right here. Follow your handbook. It's boom. It's right there. You can't go against the handbook. You can't go against the rule or the law or the Secretary of State. It's right there, and you just have to know it to be able to be good at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love your why. I mean, I too, Michelle is my why. We've been together for 20 some odd years. We've worked together the entire time
Right.
through transitions. And yeah, so it gets me up in the morning and keeps me motivated and gets me going. And I feel blessed to have it. I think you're truly blessed to have what you and Jody have. And hey, I can't thank you enough for joining me here today, Dean. Yeah, it's awesome.
I don't know if I
hear.
really helped out, or I don't know. People are going to look at this and say, "Gosh, that man talks a lot."
You know what? I just tell people shut up and listen a lot. You know, you might learn something. You never know. And but your journey has been really remarkable, and the innovative work that you're doing now in the notary world. And so, if our audience wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
My presence on LinkedIn, not a lot, and maybe not everyone uses LinkedIn or whatever, but I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. And matter of fact, that's where I do a lot of my marketing to reach out to the estate attorneys and all that. Actually, a fun story, well, not fun, but exciting story. One of my attorneys that are here in Charlotte, that was my very first attorney that I did an estate sign for. I've done multiple for him now, and people in my agent network have already done some for him as well. He called me 2 weeks ago and asked me if I had a notary in this little podunk remote area of South Carolina. And I'm like, I've never even heard of that. I literally had to Google it just to, that exists? Really? That's a weird name, but okay. But it was called Hardyville. And I'm thinking restaurant Hardee's, right? But Hardyville is like just north of Augusta, close to Charleston and so forth. But the reason why was because his college roommate's parents just moved there, and his parents are planning on retiring in Charleston. So he's expecting referrals coming from those areas, and he already had one. So I was able to connect him with a notary down there because I'm not South Carolina commissioned, I'm only North Carolina. And so we've got that set up to happen next week. But also he's expecting more down there which is kind of that whole thing when you hear people talk about relationships, right? Building the relationship with the people that you're doing business with. I had, this is another weird story, I guess, but I had a guy who called, just an independent type person who had an attorney somewhere up north that drew up his estate plans. Well, we had to go down to South Carolina for a funeral because of someone in Jody's family. But so I gave it to one of my notaries in the agent network. And so they went and did it and so forth. And then he called me 3 days later and says, oh, by the way, I'm going to need notary services again. So I'll get in touch with you when that happens. I was like, excellent. You know, I'll be here. I get an email yesterday that's kind of weird, you know, and I'm all sleuthy because if something comes in, I'm looking at it to say, that's real, that's not real, da, da, da. And I have really good filters on my email so that things will go to the trash if they're trash. Well, this one got through, and that doesn't happen very often. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just, you know, I'll do a little bit of step work on this. And so I went and looked, and sure enough, it's a legitimate business. The person's name that was on there, I went and looked, didn't see their name. So I saw a number. So I called and asked for that person. And, you know, they transferred me to this person. Well, you can imagine she's just sent this email out to someone that she has no clue who that is, which is me. I've just received an email from somebody that I have no clue is, which is her, but it is sent through this secure encryption to encryption platform that is not her business, right? So they're using a third-party encryption to secure their mail. Well, oh, and do you remember what that was?
Mhm.
Okay, that's going to happen. And so when I actually figured out from her, when I called her, she, you know, she's sort of skeptical because evidently she knows that she sent valid, legitimate documents through this particular secure exchange. I'm calling saying, I got an email from you, but I don't know why. And she's like, oh, well, maybe it was a mistake. And boom, that's her first thing of thinking, it's a mistake. I've sent it to somebody wrong. Let me correct it, da, da, da. And so she's trying to protect the information on her end and not give me any information about it. Because she's like, well, you weren't expecting any documents? Not that I'm aware of, but I do own a signing service. And, you know, I do get documents on a regular basis, but just not like this. And she says, well, let me check with the lender and I'll, you know, figure it out. But it is a legitimate transaction. And I'm like, okay. So we hang up and I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? I'm usually a very good judge of character. I can tell when someone is kind of being deceitful or trying to trick me or whatever. And, you know, granted, in the day of AI, maybe not always, but the mouth doesn't always, you know, match up with the audio. But she sounded very trusting. The website for the business was huge, and it was just something that I felt like, yeah, I'm going to take a chance on this. So I clicked on the button that said, you know, go to secure portal. So I went and looked at it, and I'm scrolling through here, looking at these documents, and I'm like, who in the world would be, you know, sending this? And I'm looking at the names and da 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 da. But these were properties that were being sold. Well, I'm looking and looking and looking, and boom, there's his name. The guy that I did the estate signing for, who was going to let me know, but he didn't let me know. They let me know. So, you know, and it's kind of wild because, you know, now these are, and believe it or not, there were 3 transactions or 3 signings in one. So what I'm talking about with that networking, we did one type of signing for him, the estate signing. Obviously, he said, well, I'm going to need notary services again. Now we have 3, okay, that come in on one scenario. So this is now a kind of weird scenario because I'm like, 3? He's got 3. So when I went and met with him and conducted those 3 signings, that was actually Monday or no, it was Monday. I went and met with him he is constantly buying and selling businesses. And so he says, I'd like to use you as my go-to notary for these things. So that didn't come from LinkedIn. That didn't come from Facebook. That didn't come from, pop-ins or anything like that. That came from us evidently doing a great job with his estate signing, realizing that we, as NotaryCLT Signings, that we are capable. And boom, now we're going to have, an even bigger opportunity. So
I think that's
if people
awesome.
want to reach out to me, LinkedIn
referrals are the
is
best.
Yep, LinkedIn is good. Or just, straight on out email, dean@notaryclt.com.
Right. And what I'll do, I'll make it easy for our listeners in the show notes. I will go ahead and include Dean's contact information, the link to his LinkedIn, email, and I'll also
Bank
include
routing numbers to just deposit as much cash as you
send
yes.
money.
I'll send that right over.
And a link to Dean's website. You can see all the amazing services that he provides. So Dean, thanks again. And to our listeners,
thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, you're so welcome. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. And as always, my friends, your life is your legacy. Go plan ahead and make it a great day.